I got it. Okay, okay. Let's talk since there's a break. I think we should start from the top of the mitzvah of the ashora of gedida and srita. HaMitzvah v'HaMitzvah hachomesh v'arboim, the 45th lav. He she's hilnu me'aseis seret bivsoreim. Now, this translation is not clear, and in Kapach he says milasos chabura be'atzmeinu, and I would hope that Kapach's translation is right, because as you proceed, kmo shiyasu or kmo keder shoisim, okay, what is better, oiv de avodah zorah, v'hu omer yisal lo yisisgeidedu. So if the Ram is quoting as the first lav before the kefil, as the lav of gedida, saying that it's a chabura will be much better, as you'll see later that he says that gedida is a chabura. If it's seret, it's a little bit odd that he quotes a lav of leisis geidedu. So, but I don't think it's much of an important thing one way or the other. But let's keep that in mind. So it should be in the bus. Okay. And here also it says Kamosha Isim or Yasu Oivde Avoid the Zor. And that means that the Hazor is doing like the Oivde Avoid the Zor. And the same in Minyan HaKotzer, in Loisesem Memhei, Shalol his Gaidaid, Ki Oivde Avoid the Zor. Okay, that's not negated now. Okay. Now, and since it's then we understand why the Rambam brings it. The Rambam has Hilchos Avodah Zarah b'Chukas Goyim, and he quotes it in Chukas Goyim in Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yud Beis and Yud Gimel. Now, at the beginning of the Rambam, he's not talking about, it seems to be there's an Isa of making a srit and a chabura. It's almost like chovel ba'atzma. He doesn't say what the chabura or the srita has to be. He says it's stam. I would have assumed that it's a preview of what he's saying later, that the Ram doesn't require mace bedafka, but it's even the Shem Avodah Zarah. And that's what he's trying to say. And the Mechayiv is again, we'll see later, that Srita or Gedida or Srita ala mace and Srita l'Shem Avodah Zarah, Chabur l'Shem Avodah Zarah. Okay, let's continue. V'omer yis'aleh lo yisis goydedu. And in here, in Ksaviat Kapach, it's written v'lo yisis goydedu, there's no tesefes. And Ibn Tibbon, he writes v'goymer. And v'goymer, it probably refers to Ksaviat Bloch, that's Ksaviat Oxford. There's a Tesefes loises simu kolcha, but that doesn't make any sense because the Torah Sefer kolcha is a separate lav minyan HaMitzvos loises kufayin aleph. So therefore, I prefer to put in without the goyim, right? Just plain loises goyim. Okay. Now, the Ram continues that Viseret is another ukva nichpolo as horazeh v'loshen acher v'omer Viseret lenefesh lo sitnu b'besarchem. So the important thing in the Rambam is these two lavim are basically, it's a kefo. And there is only one lav in Minyan HaMitzvos. We'll see later that there are those that might disagree. Okay. Now I want to show you something interesting, which I'm confused about a little bit. In all the Kisvei Yad, it's not the way as it is in Tibbin, but I've decided to accept Ibn Tibbin because it seems to be Ki'ilu Hashmot Alidei Adoimus. And I'll read to you what it says in Ibn Tibbin. Ukfa his boye bigmor evomois ki gufa de ko loisiskoidedu is loisasu chabura. So he's trying to, now he's explaining why it's kefo. Loisasu chabura, which is similar, and he's going to say later, second. Loisas chabura is going to say later, he's going to quote the Gemara Makis that Srita Ugedida is achasi. And that is a chabura or a Srita. Kfais boy kigufi de kro loisis koidulu loisasu chabura. And that's the Pashup Shat and Pasuk. It's a Chabur. So it's a Chabur Srita, is a Achas, so it's one lav. And then there's a second thing. V'shom nema gam kain loisis karedu bi boile legufe the omer achmona leisasu Chabur al meis. So now it's not stam a Chabur, but it's a Chabur al meis. Ugmo makis omru Srita ugedida achasi, which we'll see. V'shom his boyer she'al hameis bein biyad bein bekli chayiv alavodah zora bekli chayiv ubiyad pot. Okay, so let's go slowly. We'll have to explain what the avodah zora is and what's happening. Kmo shebo b'sifrei nevuah. Okay, let's go slowly. Go slowly here. Now, okay. Now, slowly here. Second. So Srita. Okay, let's one second. So in the Shnei Kisvei it says Gufe the Kro loisis goidedu mi boile le Gufe. Gufe the Kro mi boile le Gufe. The Omer Achmon loisas chabur ames. So it's a little bit odd, but it's readable. But it's a little bit I don't know how to say. It's a little grammatically awkward, and probably in there's Ashmot alidei adoimos, and it just said V'shkom nemo loisis goidedu, and it just has part of it, and this Ashmot alidei adoimos. And the way it is over here is there are two limudim. There's one limud that gedida is chabura, and also this gedida is alameis like srita, which is mafurish alameis, and therefore it's nichbal. So they're both the same in both cases. In other words, they're both chabura srita, which is pretty much the same, and the same way that srita is alameis is as the pasuk says mafurish lenefesh is gedida is also alameis. And this is against halachas gedolos that seems to say that srita and gedida are two separate lavim. In the Loisa, Mitzvah Loisa said, Ayin Zayin lo yisru tu srotes, and a Kuf Pei Dalid is Loisis Goydid. So he has two separate lavim. So it means that we'll learn from this goofy, the core, the going Yevomis, we're ending up learning that it's Chabur like Srita, and it's also Alameis like Srita. And even though it's Mavur in the Talmud, in the Gemara Yevomis there, that you can also learn Gedida, and not only Gedida, Chabura, but also Agudas Agudais, but they're not equivalent because Gedida as Chabur is Chuto Shemiko, do for goof in the Kra, and Agudis is only a drasha as the Ram explains later. Okay, and that's the Gemara Yevomis. There on Ayin on your Gimel Beis, Tanan Hosam Megillah Nikris, Biachar Hosam B'Shnei Hosam Shleisa Hosam, U'Be'Abo Hosam L'Chamisha Hosam L'Pos L'Yosef, Amalei Reish Lagish L'Abi Yochanan, Ikle Kan Loisis Titgodeddo, Loisasu Agudis, Hai Loisis Titgodeddo Riboyle Legufe. Legufe means that's Trut L'Shamikah. T'Amar Achmona Loisasu Chabur Ameis. Im Kain Lema. Im Kain Lema. Kro lois segoydeddo. My lois is gulish mamino. Lochi diasa. You have another thing coming out of it. The aim of kule lochi diasa. Im Kain Lema lois segoydeddo. My lois is goydeddo. Shmamino tatik. We're not both of them. But one is gufe the kro. Be boiling the gufe, and the other is not. Now, when the Ram says Omu Srita Gudida Achasi, L'cheira, what he's trying to say is that in Minyan HaMitzvos, it's a kefil, it's one lav. The Hainu Hach. And that's l'cheira what he's saying in the Minyan HaKotzer, where he says Shlo is goyed ugedidu srita achasi. It's a kefil. Now here, the Ram's interpretation is not clear because when you learn the Gemara Makis, the Pashto Gemara Makis that in Mitzias they're the same. Because the Gemara Makis Chofal from the Aleph, Ksov Reb Yosi Sritu Gedida Achasi, Uksiv Hosam Lameis, Omer Shmuel Amisaret Bekli Chayiv, Meisvei Sritu Gedida Achasi, Elish Srita Biyad Gedida Bekli, Hu Dioma Reb Yosi, and that it's Achas, it's the same. You came in Machalik that Srita is Biyad. and Gedidas B'Kli, but they're both all the same, Srita and Biyad and B'Kli. So what the Gemara is saying that that it's all the same, that technically it's the same, but see it's the same. The Ram learned that included in this, since it's the same, so Mamela, it's one lav. The Rambam Mishnah Torah quotes this and seems to learn that, like the Poshim Shat in the Gemara Makis, that the Srita Gedida Achasi is not that it's one lav, but the Metzias are the same thing. Because the Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah Pergid Beis Aloch Yud Beis Yud Gimel Haserit Srita Achas Al Meis Loike Shem V'Ser LeNefesh Lo Sitnu B'Sarchem V'Chule Gedidu Srita Achasi V'Chule Kach Hoyu Choyvlim Ba'atzmon Avodah Zarah Shnema V'Yizgoydedu K'Mishpato Gam Zeh Os L'Torah Shnema L'Yizgoydedu. So it's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing because the Rambam mentions the second lav afterwards. You know, he says that's Gedidu Srita Achasi, and then he says Gam Zeh Os L'Torah Shnema L'Yizgoydedu. So, in other words, if the pshat in the Rambam is to say that it's kefil, he should have quoted the lav and then afterwards said Gedidu Srita Achasi. He says before that it's one. It's a very odd thing. He doesn't seem to be saying in Mishnah Torah, and you have to do a little work to saying what exactly he says, because only quotes afterwards. Gam zeh os Torah shenem l'yizgoydedu. And he's just trying to explain that there's an Isa of the Shem Avodah Zarah, Choyvim Ba'atzmon Avodah Zarah. This requires work. The Ram Mishnah Torah is a little difficult. Now let's look at the Ram Mishnah Torah from another point of view. The same halacha Yud Beis Yud Gimel Aseret Srita Achas Al Meis Loika Shem L'Seret LeNefesh Lo Sitnu B'Besarchem V'Chule Gedilu Srita Achasi U'Kshem Shohoyu Goyim Oidei Avodah Zarah Sotim B'B'Sorim Al Meiseim Mipnei Hatzar. So the Ram says that the Isa of Srita or Gedida is because of Tsar al Amisa and not another type of Tsar. And that's the Gemara Makis, the Chofo Mebeis, Talmud Loima, Lenefesh, L'chayev Akol Nefesh Vo Afikte, Lebeisei Shenofel L'Svinosei Shetovo Bayam. So maybe a person who has a tremendous monetary loss and does a Srita Bibsoroi should be chayiv, and the chiddush is no. That the tsar has to be dafka misa, and that's what Tais is machadish. Tais is machadish that. But in other words, let's say a person dies, and you're not mitzayeh. Someone is surreit or chayvel machmas the misa, but not tsar of the misa, but tsar of the loss of divrei Torah. So Rambam, we don't know anything about that. It has to be about misa, but we don't know if it's dafka tsar of the misa or tsar of the loss of divrei Torah. It could be anything. We don't know Rambam. But Taisa says it's dafka tsar of the misa, but tsar of the divrei Torah, which is lost. Because of Misa is mutter. The Tosis and Hedgin, because they were Makar, B'Sorah, and Abelazar Ben Hukinis died, and they were in Dam with Shoises. And Tosis says in Sanhedrin Samachesam and Aleph, the Ramaskol, Hoyamake Bipsoroi, Umishum Seret Lenefesh Leket, the Mishum Teira Kovet, Rioma Halbe Mos Yeshli, the Ainli Shulchanai Lahatseis. So Abelazar says that he has a lot to say, and they didn't hear it. So they were Seret al Divrei Teira, or Choyva al Divrei Teira. So even though it was Machmas, even though it was the Misa that predicated the loss of the Divrei Torah, but it's not on the Misa, but on the loss of the Divrei Torah. And that's Mut. That's what Taisa says. So when the Rambam adds over here, that's Lameis is Bein Biyad, Bein Bekli, Chayiv. But Avodah Zorah, Bekli Chayiv, Biyad is Potter. So in Avodah Zorah, there's no Chiyuv. The Chiyuv is only in Kli. Kamo Shebo, B'Sifra in Nevuah, Sifra in Neviim, Vayizgoyim, K'mishpotam, B'Chavos, and B'Mochim. It was with Kli, so therefore it's only Kli. However, and this is the important thing, according to the Rambam, the Srita is L'Shem Avodah Zorah, but it's not he's not an Oved Avodah Zorah, because what they're talking about is a Chiyuv Malkus or not. It's Mechayiv Malkus. And it's not Mechayiv Mishum Avodah Zorah. It's not a Ma'is Avodah Zorah. So you have to say either that it's Ein Derech Avodah B'Kach, and therefore he's not Chayiv Mishum Avodah Zorah, or the Kavanah is not to be Oved the Avodah Zorah, but it's only to Mechaber the Avodah Zorah. That's another way of saying. But there's no Malchus for Mechaber Avodah Zorah. And here there's Malchus. Okay, let's continue. So it's a very big chiddush. We have to understand what this means, because what happened here is that there's a difference that the posik, the matlachera, what you have to come and say over here is that the matiki ashmur basically, you see the posik here. Let's go like this. Let's see this over here. In you see, what are we learning out from this posik in the Vim? We all know that ain't Nova Yashor Chadash Dovo. So how can the Vim tell us anything? And the Rambam seems to say that the Novi is coming as a Matiki Ashmur with a Kabbalah. That Keilu, that there is such a thing as Gedida L'Shem Avodah Zorah, which is called Gedida, and Memela, it's under a lava Lois Titgodeddo. Hani Tana Kamei Rabbi Yochanan, Ala Meis Bein Biyad Bein Bekli Chayiv Avodah Zorah Biyad Chayiv Bekli Potter. And for Ipchaksi v'Yizgoynu K'Mishpotom u'B'Mochim u'B'Chavovos u'B'Vochim Eleim u'Biyad Potter Bekli Chayiv. And the Ram's learning that it's a chiyuv of of Loisis Goydelu and Seret Lames. That's the Rambam Perigid Beis Aloch Yud Gimel. Ukshem Shoyu or Loiv Lichovim Sotim B'Psorim Al Meseim Mipnei Tzatzal Kach Hoyu Chayvlim Ba'atzmom Lavoidis Kachovim Lavodizora Leishanema Vis Goydelu Kamishpotim. But it's all Chukas Aku. And it's not the Gedidas Derech Avoida, but the Malchus then. But it's because that's the way Oivich Chom do. And this be'emes in Malachim Aleph, Perek Yud Ches, Posik Chof Ches, Kimishpotom, which we're going on this posik, there's a radak and two pshatim in radak. He says the first pshat is where the Ram is going. I don't know if it's dafka the way the radak interprets, but that's the idea. Kain hoyim mishpotim liitim kidei laharu isaom ki oz yane oisom v'kabel tfilosom. It's a rayidoch that the what happens is that there's Kabbalah's tefillah from the Avodah Zarah. If one does this, it helps the Kabbalah's tefillah, something like that. But it's not an Avodah, it's an Ezra in Kabbalah's tefillah. Ki kain hoya mishpotem liitim kidei laharis oom ki oz yane oisom v'kabel tefillos. But we don't know that according to the Rambam that that this is the time of the minig, but the Iki is that it's chukas goyim, and it's not l'shem avodah zarah. And l'chayra have two rayas like the Rambam that it's not a chiv b'shum avodah zarah. There is a sifri in Re'ei Piskotz Tzadivov. Dov acher lo yisgoydedu kederech shacheru misgoydedu. Shenema vayisgoydedu k'mishpoto. So l'chayra, if it's nesa because the lav lo yisgoydedu, it's not nisa avodah zarah. It's a nisa chabur. Like the Ram learns. And since it's quoting the pasuk in Nevi'im, in Malachim, it means that it's the love of Loisis Goydelu. And the Psikte Zutrusa in Dvorim Chav Beis Omen Aleph, Loisis Goydelu Kimashmo, Loisasu Kederch Shu Umois Oisin Al Avodah Zarah. Uka Kosev Oimer is Goydelu Kimishpotim. But here again, the love is Loisis Goydelu. And that's the rayas for the Ram. However, there's a second shot in the Radak, and that is O Yiya Gedida mi Mishpote Ho Avodah. It's an Avodah. And the emissaries we show him like that, the Yvonne, which is what we have, is Rashi and Makis there. Rashi stopped at a certain point. They're going to have your test. The Ramaskal Avodas Kachovim, the Yesh Avodas Kachovim, She'oiv the Noisan Bekach, She'oisim Bibsorum, Chaburis Upsoyes. It's only those Avodas Zarah, which is Daka Bekach, and the Chudushay with Vor Makis there. The Ramaskal Emo, Avodas Zarah, Biad Poto, B'Kli Chayiv, Irish, Minastam. The Alagoiv ain't there Avodosa, Ela B'Kli, the Dichsev is going to Mishpotim. Again, you see, according to this, it's the pasuk in the Vim is telling us history and not a Kabbalah. Okay. you see, there's an amazing thing going on over here that you see. We point out according to the second Pshat of Adak, it's history, and according to the first Pshat, it's a Kabbalah that is there's a Chiyuv Gedida for this. Okay. Now, there's an amazing thing that you could use Tanakh. You see, Tanakh over here, the Tanakh is telling us a story. And L'cheira, if you recall, the Ramban in Shurish Beis tells us that two tafkidim of Nevi'im. They are either a history or they're telling the history of Takonis Rabbanon, or telling stories, the history, okay? Or the Kabbalahs is Yecheskel Buzi lo, Moshe Rabbeinu lo, Yecheskel Buzi minayin el kach kiblu ish mipiish, and the Novi is Matik Yeshmu. Okay? Here, the Novi is coming to tell us a story. And the Ram is Machadish in the Pshat, the Gemara, that if in the story you can understand there's a Kabbalah, so there's a story, but in the story is under the surface there's a Kabbalah over here. It's a big chiddush. Now, the Achronim ask a very strange question. Okay. The question is like this. So it comes out, I'm not sure they ask it like this. They ask it different, maybe we ask it this way also. But we'll see the question asked in a different way later on. There are two Isurim over here, the Is of Gdid al Ameis and Is of Gdid Lavodazol. So why isn't it Leisechol Adam? There's the Kamisurim, Mishum Kabbalah, and this ain't like it. And that Ram says and shows Chi. So you have to ask yourself what the answer is. It could be that the answer is that the Pshuta Shomikra is X and the Kabbalah is Y. The question is that enough? Maybe that itself, by itself, is enough. In other words, the case in Leisechol Adam, we don't know what Pshuta Shomikra is. They're just many Kabbalahs. It's this, and it's Dam B'Mizrach, and it's before Tefillah, or it's before the behemoth dies, after the Shechita. You know, there are many different Pshatim here. And they're all Kabbalahs. And that's the way the Rambam presents it in Shorish Chi. Here, the Gufei Dekra is Chabur Arameis. And it's only Kabbalah that is something else. I'm not sure if a Kabbalah, an add-on to Kabbalah, and there is a Pshuta Shomikra, is enough to make it into a Lav Shabbat. Or you can say something else. That the Isa is the Chabura. and they're based drochim to be mechayiv, but it's a mechayiv for chabur. There are two types of chaburas which are under this lav, but it's an isa chabur. So I would assume that's not a reason to make it into a into lav shabakwalis. Now, here we go now to the second part over here. This is the first part. Now, Vihine Omru, that I think is more in Yevomas Yidalim and Aleph. Because there it mentions what they dinim. And that's why I thought the better Ma'amokum is Yidalim and Aleph. Shebechlal Lav Zeh Gam Kein or Ashora Michiluk Bote Dine Ho'ir B'minhogom V'chiluf Hakvutzim. Now, just before, what does it say? In Kapach, mi pilu gadibro, to have two voices in a city or in Klal Yisrael or something like that. It's the same type of thing that the king is the spokesman for Gans Klal Yisrael. The same type of Arabic grammar. Umachlikis Arabic. Now let's just see the Gemara. The Gemara says on Yudalim and Aleph, Umandi Oma, Osu, Karin and Khan, Loisis Titgodeddo. The question is, Beisham and Beisilo, did they do? They had two different minhagim, they did different. So if they did differently, Beisham and Beisilo doing differently should be allowed Loisis Titgodeddo. Loisaso Agudas Agudas. Oma Baye, Ki Amrino, Loisis Titgodeddo, going stay but they dinim beir achas. Halolo morin kedivi beishamai, halolo kedivi beishilo. Avo b'stei but they dinim b'stei ayo is less than bo. And that's the Ram seems to say. Omele rovo or beishamai beishilo stay but they dinim beir achas dom. Eloma rovo ki amino is koidu could go in bezdin beir achas. Plag morin. And this is the problem. Maybe I'm I'll come back to this. That there's a problem with Rambam that the Rambam sees the Pascha like Abaye. And the question is why. But this, you see from the Gemara on your Gimel base, you don't know there's an issue of what they did. And here, the Ram says, "Hashol mechiluk, but they dinim, dine ho'ir, b'minhogam, v'chiluf, b'hakvutzim, whatever that means, or pluga dibu." Now, there's another. V'omru leisasu agus leisis goidnu leisasu agudis agudis avagufe dekor. Which he explained before. Then it's good if you have the other gear, so like Ibn Tibbin, according to everyone, it's okay. That's a goofy the kois. V'zehu k'mo drash. So we have to understand what the Ram means k'mo drash. Okay, let's go on. What drash is? is again here the Rambam is coming against this again. The Rambam is coming against the Bahag, that the Bahag counts as a lav l'titgodedו and a lav of seret l'meis l'nefesh, and the Rambam says no. Basically, Srita and Gedida Achas, and the Isa Agudis is a drash. And it's not Pshuto Shomiklo, it's Ke'en drash. And since it's a drash and it's not Pshuto Shomiklo, it's nothing to do with Minyan HaMitzvos. The Ibn Tibin says Kamoy drash, and the Kapach says Ke'en drash. Now, interesting, when it comes to the next one, V'chein omram kol ha'machzik b'machloikis oive b'lav oive b'lav shenema lo yiyeh k'koyach v'chadosei kahu gam kain outside. You see, here the problem over here, there's gam kain, and this is going to be a problem. Gam kain means an equation. Okay. And it's going to be a problem saying it's an equation. You don't want to say it's an equation. And we'll see as we go on. But he changes the Lashon, and he says, before he says, Kamo drash, Ke'en drash, and here he says, outside hadrash. The question is, he mean the same thing? Avagufe dekra hu lahafchid. Gufe dekra is lahafchid. What does that mean? Gufe dekra lahafchid. Omnom. So this, again, we discussed in Shiur Shmini Barichus, and what's happening over here is that it's a shlila, not a soul. Hine hu shlila v'lo yashol. Ki hein biahu. She'inyan ze hamaymo hu shohakel yis'ala magid ki mi sheyachot ala kuhuna al kohanim v'yor ala kuhuna b'ma sheyovoy min azman lo ye'onesh b'ma shenenash koyach v'lo ye'onshoy shivla ba'oretz omnom ye'onshoy Kashediva Hashem biad Moshe lo. So it means that lo yekakoch, you won't get yo yekakoch, you won't be like Korach Vados. It's not an ashola, it's a story. It's telling you a idea that a person in the future who does it won't be like Korach, but what will he be like? He will be like biad Moshe lo, he will get saras. Gotzaloi matzaras. B'yomo yis'ala l'Moshe hovino Yotcha b'chekecha, ukmo shehis boer in Divrei Hayomim Beis Pechavo Pasuk Yutes v'Uzia and that Uzia had saras. Okay. See, and just get you oriented what the problem is going to happen over here. And we'll go through this slowly. But the Rambam in Shiur Shmini clearly says that the lo yek koach machlokes in Korach is only an asmachta. So l'cheira, it's only nisa d'rabbanan. And when it comes to loisis titgodeddo, agudas, pashis l'ram mishnah Torah is that there's an nisa d'raisa. So one would want to say that the Ke'ein Drash, we'll go over it, we'll just see going inside slowly, that the Ke'ein Drash or K'moy Drash is basically a drasha, but for drasha, but it's a real drasha, it's the Reisendik drasha. But since it's not Shuta Shal Mikra, there's no Malchus. But the Lo Yek Koyach Vadasai is only an Asmach. And the reason for that, I would have assumed, and this is a very important concept, and the Rambam will explain the concept, the Mirz Hashem, much more in the next Azhara, in the law of going back to Mitzrayim, of living in Mitzrayim. The Rambam will set up a new postulate that even though Pshuta Shal Mikra is a Shlila, if the Matiki Ashmur say there's an Ashara, a Shlila can become an Ashara. Because in the Matiki Ashmur say there's an Ashara, so that's it. So two of the Lavim of going back to Mitzrayim are in the Lashon of Shlila, but Chazal say that there are three Lavim, so Memela, it's a Lav. However, if the Pshuta Shal Mikra says that it's a Shlila, and you have no Kabbalah saying that there's an Ashara, it's just a drasha. I'm not sure. What I would suggest is you can't make a drasha going against Pshuta Shal Mikra, and therefore the Ram assumes that that's Asmach. And that's certainly Shiur Shmini. But over here, when it comes to loisis titgodeddo, it's just a different interpretation of the word of loisis titgodeddo. So it's not a drasha turning a shlila into ashara. It's an ashara anyway. So this drasha could be real. So that's the way you would can this over here. And I think it's very nice. However, that I think is like the in Pshutai, what's going on over here. And I think with that, we're okay. Okay, so the Pshutai in loisis titgodeddo is a drasha li'isa. And the Pshutai in Korach is telling you basically that there's an Isa of Machlekes, but Machlekes is a very peculiar Machlekes in Oyer al Kuhuna. And that is only an Asmachta clearly in Shiur Shmini. Okay, now let's just go back and try to understand things. The Rambam in Shiur Shmini says like this: V'af al pi shemotzonu lahem loshon acher b'gmor Sanhedrin kuf Yudam and Aleph v'amram kol machzik machlikis oive b'loy saseh shenema v'loy kekoach v'adosai v'zeh al tzad asmach, which is mamish between me and you. It's a pella because it says oive b'loy saseh. Lo shia pashte the korba kavana zeis. So he's clear as smachta. So maybe it's only rabbanon. Ulamashol al zeh hu nichlal tachas lav sheni. Kmo she'evaye b'makoyim. So there's another way of doing this. Because he says, V'ulam ashol al zeh. He's saying there's an ashol. Hu nichlal tachas lav sheni. Kmo she'evaye b'makoyim. And where's makoyim? Is over here. So it's very possible that the gam came is that the lav of machlik is im lo yeh kekoach v'adosai is an asmachta. But the isa machlik is a loisiskeidedu, maybe a drosha and a draisa. And then everything will be okay. And then nichlal means that it's not the ikalav, but the ikalav is the gedida and skita. And a lav tofel is the isa of shnei botei dinim and the isa machlekes, and maybe it's also under all slices guided. We just have to evaluate this because the Rambam Mishnah Torah doesn't quote it in Hilchos Avodah Zarah Kusakum as the B'chlal Lav Zeh. So maybe the difference is between Mishnah Torah and Sefer HaMitzvos. Now we have to go down over here one by one and explain what happened. So there's a lav of and we have to evaluate what's happening with the second lav of Torah. But the Ram clearly says that the lav of Leisis Titgodeddo in Machlik is not Pshuto Shomiko, but Kain Drash. And it's B'chlal, the lav of B'chlal Leisis Titgodeddo. Now, let me just add one interesting thing, and I'm going to go back and try to pull this together, Mitzvah Shem, a little bit more. But I thought there's a very interesting thing here, which I'll point out to you. And then I'd like to just wrap the rest up, okay? The Ram says that when he talks about the lav of the lo hafchid, he says shlo ye onesh al kuhuna b'ma sheyovo kol hazman lo ye'onesh b'ma shenenash koirach v'lo ye'onshei she'ivla ba'aretz. So it means the blias ha'aretz is an oynish. Okay, and they wasn't oynish by koirach blias ha'aretz, and in the future it's going to be something else. It's going to be tzaras like by Uzziah. Now, here, I'd like to point out something. Here, like this. The Rambam says that, again, that the Blia and the Tzoras is an oynish. But the future, they're not going to be net. Correct? In the future, they're going to be a different oynish. The question is, the Rambam in the Yisod Adas, in Yisod Hashmini, he says, Termin Hashamayim, V'hu shenamin shekol ha'Torah nimtzu yadeinu hayoyim hazeh, hi ha'Torah shenitna l'Moshe. U'shehu b'maylas halavlo v'chulei, v'kach diku m'choyke. V'adibo ha'moira al Yisod hazeh Hashmini hu amroi b'zeis teidun ki Hashem shalachani ki lo milibi. But isn't it? But does it say in Bria Yivra and Potzos is Pia? So the question is these psukim? It says like this. It says Vayom Moshe b'zos teidun ki Hashem shalachani las kol ma'asim eila ki lo milibi k'mois kol rimusin eila v'kudas Hashem yipoket aleim lo Hashem shalachani in Bria Yivra Hashem Potzos Pia u'bal ki yitzlas Hashem. So the question is, the blias ha'aretz over here, is it the oynish? Is it an oynish or raya for the yisod of yisod adas, the termin hashamayim? So all I would tell you, very simply, that two things are going on here, and they're two separate psukim. Vayom Moshe b'zeis teidun ki Hashem shalachani. Hashem shalachani. That's termin hashamayim. Las is kol ha'maisim ha'ela. We have to understand what las is kol ha'maisim ha'ela, because the pshat is termin hashamayim. It's not for the. It's not about the niflois. It's about termin hashamayim. Ki lo milidi im kamois kol ha'adam yemusin ela. Kulis kol yipoket ela lo Hashem shalachani. It's just if they die a natural death, then it's a raya that God didn't send me, and if they don't die a natural death, then it's a raya that God did send me. Then there's something else happening. Then there's an oynish. The imburia yivra. If there's a peculiar oynish, but in buria yivra, it's a raya doch that it's an oynish. In buria yivra, Hashem, upotza ho adomo, espio, ubolo isom, v'eskol asher lahem, v'yod chaim she'olo, v'yadata ki aniatzu ho anoshim elas Hashem. God didn't like what they did, and then it's an oynish. So there are two things going on over here. There's an oynish, and also raya yisod adas, and the chayil is no steal. Amit Hashem, next week we'll try to wrap this up and try to take up Mitzrayim and maybe the peculiar, strange love of lo yisasu achrei levavchem v'achrei nech. The Boile Shalom should be Shema Yisrael.